In Staten Island, a woman named Lisa works as a kindergarten teacher with Megan as her assistant. She's deeply committed to her students, making sure their education includes both learning and enjoyment. The children are fond of her, but despite this fulfilling work, Lisa feels a quiet dissatisfaction with her life. Once a week, Lisa attends a poetry workshop led by a teacher named Simon. She brings in her own writing, but it's often dismissed as uninspired or imitative. At home, Lisa's husband Grant remains consistently supportive. He reads her poems eagerly and encourages her to keep writing. Lisa still loves him deeply, but she's frustrated by how routine and passionless their life has become. Their teenage children, Josh and Lainey, barely interact with them. When they do, it's in brief, detached responses. They prefer eating outside with friends and ordering food instead of sharing a meal together as a family. One afternoon, after class has ended, Lisa waits with a student named Jimmy, who is pacing the classroom while waiting for his ride. Without warning, Jimmy recites a poem aloud, something original, containing language about God and beauty. Lisa is stunned. She immediately writes down the poem after hearing it. When the babysitter, Becca, arrives to pick up Jimmy, Lisa asks her if she could also write down any poems Jimmy might say at home. Becca finds the request a little odd, but doesn't object. That night, Lisa shares Jimmy's poem with her husband. Grant agrees that it's quite beautiful, but is somewhat unsettled that a 5-year-old would express himself in such a mature way. At her next poetry workshop, Lisa recites Jimmy's poem as her own. For the first time, her classmates and Simon praise her work. Encouraged by the response, Lisa begins paying closer attention to Jimmy, hoping to hear more of his spontaneous verses. One day during recess, Lisa overhears Jimmy using a bad word. She brings him inside for a timeout. In the classroom, she gently tries to guide him back into the kind of poetic mood she saw before. She wonders if the Anna mentioned in his poem is his mother, but Jimmy doesn't want to talk about poetry. He mentions that his mother is dead. Lisa reads him a classic poem and encourages him to look at the world differently, to feel things in everyday objects. Jimmy doesn't respond. Later, Lisa leaves Jimmy in Megan's care for a moment while she talks to Becca. She mentions the odd shift in Jimmy's behavior, how he can be energetic one moment and then suddenly go quiet. Becca agrees, saying that Jimmy often acts strangely, calling him a weirdo. Lisa is uncomfortable with the word but moves on, asking again about whether Jimmy says anything poetic at home. It turned out that Becca was the only one at home who knew Jimmy sometimes recited poetry of his own because his family didn't pay attention to him. His father was always busy at work, and his mother was away in Miami, which was why Jimmy considered her dead. The relative who actually spent the most time with Jimmy was his uncle, who often came by and read to his nephew. Glad to hear someone was supportive of the kid and clearly not approving of Becca, Lisa ended their little meeting, but before leaving, Becca gave her another poem Jimmy had written at home the previous day. Later, Lisa read Jimmy's latest poem in class, earning her more praise. Some students were a bit frustrated, though, because her poem didn't fit the assignment they had been given. Yet Simon loved it so much that, in order to defend her, he suddenly came up with the excuse that his assignments weren't supposed to be literal, merely prompts in case they needed them. When Lisa returned home, she was in such a good mood that she tried to connect with Lainey and commented on how involved she used to be with her photography, especially since she had been very talented with Grant's camera. Sadly, Lainey had no interest in old-style cameras and was happy to take a few pictures with her phone for her Instagram, which disappointed Lisa greatly because she didn't see the artistic merit in it. Afterward, Lisa tried to call Jimmy's dad to discuss his son's talent, but she was met with the answering machine. This wasn't the first time it had happened. Lisa had been trying to contact him for days now, yet the man never called back. Sometime later, while the whole class was having their nap, Lisa woke Jimmy up on purpose and took him to the teacher's bathroom. There, Lisa managed to get Jimmy excited about the idea of getting the point of view of an adult. He felt like a giant and enjoyed snooping around, but soon he got bored and requested to go back to his nap. Lisa let him go after making him promise he'd think more about seeing the world with different eyes. At the end of the day, Lisa's efforts showed results, and Jimmy recited a new, beautiful poem. Although it took her by surprise, she didn't manage to write down all of it, and Jimmy refused to repeat it. Megan was nearby as well, but she didn't pay attention because she thought Jimmy was singing a random song, irritating Lisa with her lack of appreciation for his amazing talent. When Becca came to pick Jimmy up, Lisa showered her with questions, wondering how many important poetic moments they were missing, and if it was Becca herself who tucked Jimmy in at night. This constant questioning was beginning to weird Becca out. But when Jimmy came out to meet her, she still stayed cooperative and asked him to let her know when he had a poem in mind so she could help. Day by day, Lisa's obsession grew bigger and creepier. One afternoon, she managed to arrange a meeting with Jimmy's uncle Sanjay, who worked at the local newspaper. Lisa explained to Sanjay how important it was to her to safeguard Jimmy's talent in a society determined to crush it, and she accidentally drifted into a complaint about her own children, who would not read and seemed to lack curiosity. She also voiced irritation that Becca treated Jimmy like a baby, insisting the babysitter's attitude was detrimental to the boy's abilities. Sanjay promised he would keep visiting and reading with Jimmy, but he noted that this was a conversation Lisa should really be having with the child's father. He would do what he could to convince his brother to return her calls. When Jimmy's father still did not respond, Lisa crossed the line. She took Jimmy's phone from his bag. Once again, she woke him in the middle of nap time and took him outside, showing him how she saved her number on his phone so that whenever a poem came to him at home, he could telephone her and recite it. She also instructed him not to let Becca call him names like Little Bunny because she believed such pet names belittled him. At home, matters were no better. Lisa and Grant were distressed because Josh had decided to discard his studies and university acceptance letters in favor of joining the Marines. A heated argument followed, during which Josh accused his mother of caring only about the achievements in her head, leaving her in tears. After Josh stormed off, Grant attempted to comfort his wife and began getting amorous in the living room. Lisa welcomed it at first, but the moment her phone rang, Jimmy calling with another poem, she halted everything to answer. Disappointed, Grant dressed and found something else to occupy his time. The next day at school, Lisa praised Jimmy both for the new poem and for calling her. She then shared one of her own poems. Jimmy offered no comment and seemed unimpressed. Later, Lisa came home to discover her children hosting a pool party that involved marijuana. Furious, she confronted Lainey, confessing that she longed for more curiosity and intellectualism in a household. Lainey, angered, retorted that her mother never appreciated the good grades she did earn and only pretended to be some high IQ intellectual because she took a poetry class. Lainey then walked away. Left alone, Lisa retrieved a pack of cigarettes she kept hidden in the garden and, while smoking, phoned Jimmy simply to say hello. A few days afterward, Simon summoned Lisa to his office, offered further praise for her latest work, and invited her to read some of her poems at a poetry reading event held at his favorite bar. Lisa naturally accepted Simon's invitation, and, in his office, she read aloud the same poem she had shared with Jimmy. Simon, however, was far less enthusiastic about this piece, as he compared it to the visionary quality of her other poems. Unaware that those lines had been taken from Jimmy, his excitement built to the point that he pulled Lisa to the floor and they had sex right there. The encounter left no doubt that Simon was drawn more to what he believed was her artistry than to Lisa herself. His reaction made Lisa reconsider everything. She concluded that Jimmy should present his own poems in public. When she proposed the idea, Jimmy agreed, and Lisa began excusing them from class to rehearse in the school auditorium. That evening, tired of waiting for a callback, Lisa went to the lounge where Jimmy's father, Nickel, tended bar. Nickel was pleased to learn his son was bright, but Lisa pressed further, insisting the boy's talent needed nurturing and complaining that Becca treated him like a pet. Nickel wanted to support Jimmy, yet did not wish his son to end up like Sanjay, a failed writer, as he put it, now eking out a living correcting newspaper copy. Lisa offered to babysit Jimmy herself in the afternoons, promising to enrich him with proper activities while allowing him an ordinary life otherwise. Nickel agreed. However, when she mentioned the poetry reading scheduled for Thursday, he forbade Jimmy's attendance because the boy had baseball practice that day, and maintaining routine was, in his view, more important. From then on, Lisa took charge of Jimmy after school and escorted him to museums and other stimulating places. When Thursday arrived, she told Nickel that Jimmy wasn't feeling well and skipped baseball practice. Instead, she dressed him in a small suit and brought him to the poetry reading. Their rehearsal paid off. Jimmy stood on stage and recited his poems flawlessly. When audience members asked who had written the verses, Lisa openly credited Jimmy, unbothered by Simon's presence. Someone then asked who Anna was in the poem. Jimmy replied that Anna could be anyone one loves. For him, Anna was Megan. Hearing her assistant's name instead of her own pierced Lisa's heart, and she fled to the restroom to cry in private. Worried about her, Jimmy follows Lisa to the restroom, but she gently asks him to wait outside after telling him how proud she is of him. Once she's composed herself, Lisa steps out, only to panic when she doesn't see Jimmy. Thankfully, he hasn't gone far. He's sitting with Simon. Her relief vanishes quickly. However, when Simon coldly informs her that she's no longer welcome in his class, he accuses her of exploiting a child's gift for her own gain. By the time they leave the bar, it's so late that Lisa decides to bring the sleeping Jimmy to her house and let him rest on the couch. In her own bedroom, Grant stirs and questions whether she's ashamed of their children. He explains that after she stormed off earlier, Josh confided that it felt like she was disappointed in them. Lisa denies this, but her hesitation makes the truth painfully clear. The next morning at school, Lisa becomes visibly distressed when Jimmy doesn't show up, and even more so when her calls go unanswered. Eventually, her phone rings from Jimmy's caller ID, but it's Nickel on the line, furious. He scolds her for what she did and informs her that Jimmy is being transferred to a new school. Devastated, Lisa returns to her classroom and tries to carry on, but she breaks down in tears in front of her students. Later, at home, Lisa refuses to give up. Instead, she decides to make amends with her family first. She acts especially warm toward Grant and convinces the kids to stay for dinner. Around the table, Lainey apologizes for her outburst during the pool party, and Josh opens up about his plans with the Marines, grateful for his mother's interest and support. The following morning, Lisa kisses Grant goodbye with more tenderness than usual and drives off with a suitcase in the car. But she doesn't go to work. Instead, she follows Nickel's car until she discovers Jimmy's new school. When recess begins and Jimmy's class is in the playground, Lisa approaches the back fence and invites him to go swimming with her, an activity she knows he enjoys. Jimmy, excited and happy to see her, tells her he's missed her. To Lisa, this validates everything. In her mind, she's rescuing him, not stealing him. Lisa teaches Jimmy how to unlock the school door from the inside, and together, they leave without being noticed. They drive north, stopping at a beach where they spend the afternoon swimming and playing in the water. Jimmy is joyful and relaxed, even reciting a new poem on the shore. Later that evening, they check into a hotel for the night. Lisa tells him they'll be heading to Canada next. After Jimmy finishes his shower, Lisa takes her turn, but she hasn't been in for long when she hears a noise, something unusual. Realizing the bathroom door has been locked from the outside, she quickly understands what's happened. Jimmy has trapped her inside. Panicked but still clinging to hope, Lisa tries to reason with him through the door. She offers ice cream, more beach trips, anything to keep him on her side. But Jimmy doesn't respond. Instead, he goes straight for the hotel phone, fumbling to figure out how to use it. Knowing the end has come, Lisa breaks down. Still, she tries to ease the moment for him. Through her tears, she calmly explains how to call 911, even though Jimmy already knows what to say. He uses the word kidnapped easily. Lisa walks him through giving the hotel name and room number and tells him to make sure the police know she isn't armed. Once the call is made, Lisa gently asks Jimmy to unlock the door so she can get dressed before the police arrive. He agrees. As she brushes her hair, Jimmy comes over and quietly holds her hand. Despite everything, he still doesn't want to see her cry. Minutes later, the police arrive. They lift Jimmy into the back seat of the patrol car, away from the woman who took him. As the officers begin sorting through the situation, Jimmy quietly announces that he's thought of a new poem, but nobody hears him.